He dropped out of college to focus on coding and founded Dojo, the revolutionary first true cross-browser open source JavaScript framework. He fought with browser vendors, but instead of being hated, he was hired to help make them better. He led Google Chrome development for over a decade and now a partner product manager at Microsoft Edge. Please welcome Alex Russell. Hi, Alex. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, I'll add a few caveats to the pretty story that was just told. I am Alex Russell. That part's true. I am a product manager on the Edge team, and I still do spend most of my day doing engineering work. And I did work on the Chrome team for 12 and a half years. But I will say that everything before that, and maybe most of my time at Google, was a random walk. I didn't drop out of school explicitly to focus on coding. I dropped out of school because I was a terrible student who happened to spend most of my time writing JavaScript instead. These were not conscious choices. These were, I think, what you would colloquially call a mistake. And I was very lucky along the way to meet friends and now current and former colleagues who had similar interests and were willing and able to help, try to find a better way to do certain things. And in some cases we succeeded, and in some cases we failed spectacularly, and I'm still picking up some of those messes. So we can talk about all of that.
Yeah, so I want to start with a career choice you made when you was a kid, right? You was at high school. What kind of student you was at high school?
So I also went to high school in the Midwest, just north of Indianapolis, so not far from where you are. And I was interested. I spent most of my time in high school doing performing arts. I spent a lot of time singing, mostly, and tripping over my second left foot. But when I wasn't doing that, I was very interested in computers from an early age. I had the traditional sort of straight white dude with an engineering dad backstory where my father was a mechanical engineer and he always had computers in the house, and I was interested and drawn like a moth to flame, as the analogy goes from Unlocking the Clubhouse. And the path from there was one where I had not very many moments of self-awareness as a high schooler, but one of them was to realize somewhere near my senior year, when I had been doing, sort of this parallel track of spending most of my time, doing performing arts stuff, and the other half, more or less, in advanced classes that were science focused, and realizing that I really enjoyed the computing stuff, and in my senior year, I decided that I liked it enough that I should take a touch typing class because I couldn't type fast enough. I still can't type well. I'm dyslexic. It's sad. And that looking around, looking at the futures that were on offer from those two things, I decided that even if I wasn't even the middling software or computer person seemed to have a pretty decent career set of options, right? Like a opportunity cone was much wider at the end than it was for folks who had gone to college to do performing arts. And so that set me to go look at colleges that had good, strong engineering schools.
So you set yourself to get an engineering degree, and specifically computer engineering or software engineering.
Yeah, computer engineering at Purdue.
And basically at Purdue. So you applied to the college. Did you have to take a loan, like student loan, which would pay for your education?
So my folks come from a relatively well-to-do place, and they were able to support myself and my siblings through most of school. But I decided to pay for what I could, and I decided that I would go to school when I could afford to, and not when I could. Now, that wasn't much of a sort of a generous choice, because I was not a very good student, so I wasn't asked to stay for very long. It's not like there was a lot of money at risk here. there's no grad school debt to talk about. But I did work my way more or less through my sophomore and junior years, and that was some of the time that I spent trying to find jobs on the side to do stuff to keep myself fed and clothed and stuff during the school year was some of the most rewarding work that I ever did. I got to work on RCA.com, which was selling televisions on the internet in 1999, which was, not a thing that anyone did. And so that was another stroke of luck, not genius. And so
basically you have to study and work at the same time.
But this is very common, right? Like many people do. But I would, spend the one summer I worked for 6 or 9 months and didn't go to the fall semester, that sort of thing.
So you say like you dropped out because you was not a good student, not because you did something else. And when you say you was not a good student, I just want to understand, you didn't have time to be a good student?
No, I failed out. I sucked. I was much more interested in other things. So I was much more interested in the little dynamic HTML projects, which is what we call JavaScript development at the time, that I would sort of pick up on the side. I was much more interested in sort of the security research aspects and the independent studies that I was doing in that. And those interests, I realized about myself that I'm entirely interest driven. And so that's a bad way to be as an employee. It's probably a bad way to be, as a human, but it's sort of baked into the cake for me. And so having realized that, I just kind of followed those interests.
Basically, you making a decision. Like you say, like, I don't want to stay in a college.
Oh, I didn't make a decision. No. I was kicked out of school. I failed out.
Oh, you were kicked out.
I sucked.
What was the reaction of your parents? What?
They had like, a good 18 years of forewarning, right? So they weren't surprised, and I didn't have any money, so I didn't have any debt. So that was the upside, but I also didn't have money. And so from there, I had been, helping to run and been president of the Linux users group on campus. And, I had done, I had gotten myself into open source and all those sorts of attendant things pretty heavily. And so, I kind of had a sense for what my values were by the time I left and who my friends were. And those things caused me to want to do, something that would pay a wage. And I started applying for jobs, and I got extremely lucky. A little tiny managed security services provider that was extremely Linux based. We made our own distro from Madison, Wisconsin, eventually decided to hire me because I knew something about how Unix worked, and I understood something about how computers worked, and I understood something about how the websites that they needed to build worked, because that was not a skill that they necessarily had in-house. And so they were willing to pick up a Dropout, and I am extremely grateful for everything I got to learn there too.
So let me ask you a question. Did you try to come back and get your bachelor? Or currently you still don't have a bachelor degree?
I still do not have a degree. Yes. When I applied to Microsoft, they had to spend money with the background check company to go to verify my student records to confirm that I am actually a dropout. Yes.
Oh, wait. So that did you surprise Microsoft by actually having this record?
It's unusual. It was unusual when I joined Google, and I was only able to join Google because the folks who hired me were also willing to see past my obvious deficiencies, which are legion, right? There's lots of deficiencies. So, knowing people or building a community or being part of a community of people who can know you more deeply than just the code you wrote is often extremely helpful.
You mentioned that you was looking for a job when you was kicked out of the college.
Yeah.
So you probably had a resume. So how this happened that you ended up...
Not a good one. I've been kicked out of college. Just like level set. Not a good one.
Not a good one. So, but when you got into Google, did you apply to a Google job? Like you was crafting your resume, sending it to Google, or it was opposite? Google came for you?
I had been working at a little startup called JotSpot with Joe Kraus and Graham Spencer. and I was their JavaScript monkey, and that was pretty good because we ran JavaScript both on the client and the server side. This is all before Node, so we had to run Rhino under the JVM, that kind of thing.
Yep.
But Dojo was a tool that we could run both on the client and the server. What I think eventually became called isomorphic JavaScript, and so that was helpful. And so at the time, I had been recruited by my former colleagues in open source who had all gone to Google, and they eventually tried to get me in. And I went in for a round of interviews, and because I had this, I think if you were a dropout, it's hard not to have a chip on your shoulder, right? Because you failed miserably at something that you thought you were going to, that you see a lot of your peers and colleagues succeeding at. And, I'm not better than that. And so I went in for the interviews in part just to see if I could pass, right? And I got an offer after interviewing with some people who I respected greatly, and they really, shook the ship down. But I knew that I had these big blind spots because I didn't graduate, right? So I think at this point in the industry, we all kind of understand that the way the big tech hiring rubric has looked for the last 15 years basically optimizes for skills that you could acquire if you were very good at your computer science classes at a top university, right? Like it's, graph traversal and, compression algorithms and, tell me something about networking, right? Or maybe some systems design. And all of that's very helpful. But if you've been in the industry for a while, what you'll realize is that's not kind of what you do day to day. You're doing collaboration.
Yeah.
So I knew a little bit about what that process looked like. And so I spent a week or two just boning back up on my low-level algorithms and, wire speed networking and graph stuff and distributed systems as they were understood then. And I just studied. I studied, and I just wrote little programs. And I think that got me through the first interview round without totally embarrassing myself. I got an offer, and like the idiot that I am, I turned it down.
Really?
Yeah, because I at the same time,
you didn't like the numbers, or what? Why did you turn it down?
Because my other offer was to go work on Dojo full time. At that point, I had been working at this startup, and I really respected the founders, and I wanted to keep working there. But eventually, I felt like I was also felt pulled because Dojo was taking a lot of time, and I couldn't put as much time into work as I felt like I owed them. And they had been extremely supportive and helpful with the project, of course. But I decided that it was the right and fair thing to do to go take the offer to do Dojo with Dylan at the company that he'd set up around it. And so I went to do that for a few years. JotSpot was eventually bought by Google, so I probably would have ended up there in the gravity well anyway. Yeah, because part of the reason I didn't take the first offer was that they couldn't tell me what I was going to work on. And there was a team at the time called the Firefox team, and it was what eventually became the Chrome team. And it included like heroes of the browser revolution, right? Aaron Boudman and Darren Fisher, who is now at the browser company, and Ben Goodger, Darren and Ben had been a key part of Firefox. That caliber of engineer. And the alternative was to work on Picasso Web albums with a team that was in LA. And Picasso Web sounded great, but the other choice, right? For me personally, for my interests, it was clear, but they couldn't tell me what I was going to do. So I had a sure thing in one area and 50-50 in the other. So I went for the sure thing. So eventually they basically came back and said, okay, we know you're going to do this. Would you consider coming here to do it? And then I was briefed on the sidelines of a conference that they were very much in the same style as they had done with Gears. They were going to put the right people on it rather than me. Ananta, Orion Iyengar, Amit Joshi, just Stoyan, just these incredible low-level engineers who I would never have been able to find a way to work with or or let alone get an introduction to, they were going to be put on this project. And it's like, okay, all right. I mean, because they were going to do it, and they were going to put Google's brand behind it, and they were going to put the engineering muscle into making it happen. So that became Chrome Frame. That's why I joined the Chrome team. And then once Chrome Frame was shippable, I guess, the next set of, because again, right, the point here is not to build software. The point is to solve a problem for people who have a problem.
Yes,
is to make something better in society, not to make something better for yourself. Although, as someone who's in society, you kind of want to be able to see your impact that way. But and that's satisfying. But the point of software is leverage. The point of software is to take the ability to replicate bits in one place and multiply that everywhere to make change faster than you could do it if you were just turning a crank. So let's do that. And let's do that so that it makes people's lives better.
So as we more trying to focus on a career, I also have a lot of questions on AI. Specifically, should we go into software engineering because AI is going to replace all the software engineers? Or it will not replace the software engineers, so it's not a problem, it's not a risk. What do you think about the impact of the artificial intelligence on software engineering jobs? Like, are we going to get replaced?
I can maybe try a bull case and a bear case. The bull case for AI and ML largely is that it is breaking through thresholds, both in terms of token size to token context size at an incredible clip. And as those limits fall away and as memory gets sorted out, that's maybe big question marks, right?
Yep.
As memory gets sorted out or autocorrection gets added, then a lot of problems that seem like they will require, excuse me, detailed computer science talent to begin to solve are going to become things that will be more like how chip design is today, right? Where you sort of take big blocks and put them together. Now we've in a lot of ways moved already to a place where we do more composition than authoring in software, and that may accelerate. Things like writing test collateral may become extremely automated, and so large portions of the software development process may move faster. The bear case is two-sided. One, we don't have a lot of evidence that that's economical, like today or ever yet. I'm sure that the folks at GitHub want me to tell you about how great Copilot is for the low price, and they're not wrong. And that price is likely to fall, but it isn't clear to me that we've yet captured all the externalities there. So that may set a window on that. The other side of it is that it is always going to require judgment to decide whether or not the computer is doing the right thing, right? The thing about programming is that computers do exactly what you tell them to do. I mean, until now, where you can hand them a bunch of data and tell them what they should have known to do. But like that's kind of a separate thing. That's its own sort of domain of problem solving.
Do you mean responsibility, by the way? So because who is responsible if things done wrong, right?
Yes. Because in two ways. One, the cost to the customer of getting it wrong goes up, not down, especially as your software becomes important enough to pay for it. If something is important enough to pay for, then people are asking you to take responsibility implicitly, and you have it whether or not you believe it. The other that will be adjudicated in court, right? And the other side of it is that the operational costs may not be apparent upfront. And one of the things I see today in working with teams is that a lot of the tools and technologies that they've been handed have operational costs that were not transparently advertised. I think about the JavaScript frameworks that a lot of the teams I work with today are drowning in, frankly. Most of the cost of those teams is not in the code writing moment, the thing that actually gets advertised. It's in the operational complexity of having to be perfect all the time, because when you decide to front load your entire experience into JavaScript, now you have to serve it perfectly, you have to code split it perfectly. You have to log it on the client side. You have to build new infrastructure for that stuff. All the observability becomes your problem. All of those problems, all the things that I should have predicted and didn't as a 20-year-old are now eating teams I work with alive. And there's no, I don't think we have a good understanding yet of what the operational ongoing costs to AI largely generated software or AI mostly generated software will be. And that's at least an effect with an error bar on it large enough that it causes me to wonder.
So my takeaway from you just said that the software engineering as a profession is still in demand. So there's no AI coming and doing your job. You have to be there.
No one is replacing judgment.
Judgment.
So the thing that we ask software engineers to do is not to write software; it is to solve problems, right?
Yep. Yes.
And if we conceive of our job as solving problems for other people, not just ourselves, then the pieces of generating some software to do a thing will get easier. Knowing if it's the right thing, well, that's still going to require us in the loop, at least for the moment.
If you are investing into open source and contributing into open source, you should think about what kind of open source you are interested in, because there are open sources which are making a huge impact on everyone. So they're like, your code is running in production just all over the places. Now, this is one thing versus open source who nobody knows and you have no idea.
And the difference between those is both intent, but also luck. And we should acknowledge it as such. But what I would say that the value to me in my own, I don't want to say career, that feels pretentious, journey has been, because it's not a career, really, it's a series of luck accidents strung together. The pieces of this that have been helpful to me most have been learning how to help other people with problems that they've got in a way that puts collaboration front and center, setting up an environment where other people can collaborate together and you can facilitate that, helping people see each other and the problems that they've got, and then, some level of community building. And all of those things are about the code when you're doing open source work, but they are more important than the code, because, and that doesn't say they're a substitute for it. You have to build the thing and solve the problem, right? That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing you get judged on. That's the thing you will be judged on over time. But the quality of the products that you build is about the quality of the values that you encourage everyone who shows up to hold. And that is the thing that really separates product quality over time. The values of the people who own, operate, and manage the construction and deployment of that software define the results more than any other property I can think of, because that will eventually turn into conversations around, where does headcount go this quarter? Which OKRs are we going to prioritize?
Yeah,
pieces of this testing pipeline are we going to renovate in order to improve our, to reduce our flakiness? Or are we just going to disable tests? The values, the willingness and ability to decide not to take shortcuts, but to solve the hard problems is the thing that you can go and build a muscle to do in open source that would otherwise take getting hired at exactly the right place to get exposure to.
Alex, how much time do we have? Because I have.
I'm sorry, I do have to run soon, but yes.
Oh, you have to run. So the one last question: you shifted career, so you are project manager at Microsoft Edge.
Nominally.
Yeah. So your engineering skills and deep technology and programming skills, do they help to do management or they hurt?
I should say that I'm a bad product manager. I don't fit the normal product management mold. I was initially hired in as something called a program manager, which Microsoft doesn't have anymore. And then that's a strictly more technical role. But my job has always been weird. At Google, the idea that I was an engineer was also kind of a fiction. I spend my day, I write code, sure, but the important parts of the job are to go talk to people who have the problems, do that over and over again, help them solve those problems. Usually at a senior level, that's through design. You're helping people to understand the meta problem, and then helping to build and run processes that make everyone else around you more effective. right? Those are the things that you do. A lot of senior engineering time is design review, because you're not going to write the code necessarily, although you might tweak it here and there. But your job is to help someone else grow into the place where they understand enough about systems design that they can do that and understand and appreciate all the constraints that actually exist on the system, rather than the ones that you might rock up to if you were just writing some code to solve this one small problem. Because you're solving usually a big problem in an organization. And building appreciation for those organizational constraints and those product constraints is fundamental to success. So the job is to build communities. I do that here now. We have a little group called Project Sidecar, where we go around the company and we help other teams improve their web apps, because we think that it's good for the platform for us to learn directly from the teams who are building web apps. And then maybe we can give something back. Maybe we can help them with a problem. Today, that problem is almost always performance. So I spend a lot of my time still helping teams get out of the sort of performance ditch that modern front-end frameworks have put them in. But the goal is to learn and to learn, by looking deeply at the system. And so back to your original question, understanding the system in as many layers down as you can stretch yourself to, and as many layers above you as you're willing to go. Each layer you add to your ability to traverse without a lot of difficulty makes you more effective. And the difference between an engineer who is sort of new and an engineer who's got a lot of the people that you should look up to are the ones who can traverse up and down the system to solve a problem at the most appropriate level, not the one that they happen to be most comfortable with right now.
Product manager at Microsoft Edge, contributor to Google Chrome and Dojo framework. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.